Welcome to a world where renting an apartment can turn into a real adventure. In these stories, we'll meet some tenants who had some pretty tough times with their landlords, from dealing with broken heaters to facing off against some seriously sneaky behavior. These tales are full of twists and turns. Join us as we dive into the challenges these tenants faced and how they fought back against some not so great landlords. Hello and welcome back to the Karma Stories podcast. I'm Rob and I hope you are having a wonderful day today. Today I have 3 stories for you from the ProRevenge subreddit. The Karma Stories podcast is published to all major podcasting platforms, and you can read along on YouTube under the handle at Karma Stories Podcast. Alright, let's jump right into some ProRevenge. This story comes to us from Lily's Daddy. I won't give up till you are no longer a landlord. I regretfully got an apartment with what is, in my opinion, the worst landlord ever. This man, we'll call Entitled Dick, or ED, has the audacity to call himself a good person in court. Let me fill you in. I got an apartment shortly after being released from prison. Happy that someone was going to give me a chance to improve my life, this was clearly not the case. All was well for the first few months. Then winter hit and the heat went out. It took 3 days to get Entitled Dick to even answer his phone. By that time, his voicemail was full of complaints from his freezing cold tenants. He told me the law gave him reasonable time to fix it. We went 2 more weeks with no heat, using our stoves and camping in the kitchen in our respective apartments. When Entitled Dick got his electricity bill, he attempted to raise the rent on the apartments. Obviously, he was not allowed by the city, so he refused to pay his electricity bill, thus denying all of us heat at all. This is where my OCD kicked in, and I went full research mode. I studied every law in regards to federal, state, and city landlord-tenant laws and rights. I found so many violations, it was no longer funny, but scary. I studied building code. I studied the condition of all of his apartments. This was easier due to the fact that I was either friends with his tenants or had gone there to repair damages caused by frozen pipes and electrical outlets failing due to shoddy wiring and so forth. Entitled Dick had pissed off all of his tenants. Every last one was pissed to the point where they wanted to testify against him in court, but couldn't due to the financial hardships the living conditions we were in had been causing. I formulated a plan to get him to repair the buildings he owned. But Entitled Dick had his own plan. January 2nd at 2 a.m., I was awoken by the smoke detectors in the whole building going off. I quickly ran to the back hall because no smoke was in my apartment yet, but I was on the top floor. I opened the door and was greeted by a thick wall of smoke. I quickly ran downstairs after shouting for my girlfriend at the time to get out of the house quick. I pounded on every door and screamed, "Fire!" I got as many people as possible to evacuate, but the floor with the fire, no one was answering, and to my knowledge, contained children. So I panicked. At this point, the fire department was there and began breaking in doors. I evacuated. After the fire was out and the investigation had started, I witnessed Entitled Dick give the tenant of that apartment's sister an envelope containing an undisclosed amount of cash, which was visible to anyone nearby. 2 weeks later, the results were released. Arson. The tenant had used hairspray to start the fire and hid the evidence in a hole she punched in the wall. The very person who had been given money by the landlord. Ironically, she was the only tenant who had paid rent in the whole building because she had started moving in 2 days prior. I had not known she was now a tenant, and her sister and kids had moved out the day before. I looked at Entitled Dick and told him I knew what he had done, and I was not going to rest until he lost all of his buildings. I then began asking his tenants for their stories about their interaction with Entitled Dick. This is where things got real. He had been accused of everything from ripping off employees, theft, grand theft auto, bank fraud, and so much more. I formulated a new plan. I sucked up to him and made it known I am a computer tech. Entitled Dick had a few broken computers and some printer and network issues. I was in. We worked a deal on payment for back rent. I knew he was not good for his word, but it was all part of the plan. Once I got his passwords and logins, I copied his entire hard drive to my portable one. I copied all emails in his business account and printed his financial records on my Wi-Fi printer, which was next door. After I fixed his computers and network, I then went home to review my newfound evidence. It was enough. More than enough. I contacted code enforcement with all of the violations of code for every building, including the illegal electrical installation in his new office without permits or even an electrician. He was immediately investigated. That night, I found a 7-day notice to quit on my door. My roommate was worried, but I filled him in on the plan. Remember, I studied all those laws and rights. Well, we get to court and I open with, "Your Honor, I have proof of a clear violation of the Warranty of Habitability Act. The eviction was thrown out and he was forced to repair my apartment with me still in it immediately." The next month, I was given another eviction notice. Still, he is losing money due to the fact I was teaching his tenants landlord-tenant rights and the laws associated with it. Entitled Dick kept losing his court dates and kept being told to fix stuff and was continuously fined by the courts and the code enforcement. He was sinking fast. Back to that fire, the woman living there was arrested for arson and charged with 2 counts due to the accidental electrical fire on New Year's Day, which turned out to be ruled intentional. So the hairspray was in reality attempt 2. He was under investigation for conspiracy to arson and other charges. I wasn't done yet. We went to court for my non-payment of rent. I won again based on the Landlord Retaliation Act because I had contacted code enforcement and can prove this blatant retaliation, and the judge didn't even listen to Entitled Dick. Needless to say, spending the winter without heat took a toll on us tenants. We bought electric heaters and informed the power company that the landlord had shut off all the power to all of his building and was requiring the tenants to pay for their own power. Well, apparently, his illegal wiring caught up to him. He had wired apartments to run off of each other, and the common areas were now attached to wiring in every apartment. This put Entitled Dick in a rough position, as local law says it's the landlord's responsibility to supply power to all common areas. This means his shoddy workmanship and illegal wiring prevents him from legally disconnecting the power. The power company turned on all the power and locked his ability to shut it off until the wiring of common areas was repaired and separated from the apartments. This would cost thousands. Thousands we knew he didn't have. Entitled Dick was panicking. He kept losing in court. People were legally withholding rent. He couldn't shut off services, and the fines were debilitating. He kept blaming his tenants and refused to repair things. One by one, the buildings were condemned, and Entitled Dick was required to pay for relocation of his tenants by law. Well, he didn't. He couldn't. He was arrested for attempting to sell 3 buildings the city confiscated from him and for selling one that was condemned. Entitled Dick got what he deserved. He lost every building he owned, got charged with all kinds of fraud, and was investigated for other crimes I'm still unaware of. But I wasn't done. He caused a lot of suffering. I gave his financial records to the IRS with all the internal memos and everything I got from his computers. Also, I provided the local authorities and code enforcement with the same things. Entitled Dick was so screwed. I have since gotten a new apartment, and everything he owned has been taken by the city, state, and IRS. I have not seen Entitled Dick in 3 years, and all of his properties have been bought by someone new, repaired, and have all new tenants who are happy with their new landlords. The old tenants got better places with decent landlords. And what about our wonderful Entitled Dick? He is serving multiple sentences for the crimes he has committed, and is already not getting out anytime soon. Yet the investigations are not done, and the charges keep on coming. Entitled Dick is somewhere in some prison regretting meeting this tenant. Moral: don't be an entitled dick unless you want to meet the moral enforcer. Jumping down to the comment section on this one, there's one from a user called Monkey Throw Poop. It says, so you told him that you know what he did and that you wouldn't rest until he lost all his buildings, and then he hired you to a position that would give you access to all of his business information? That seems fishy. OP responded and said, I stated that I did say that, but I didn't say it to him. I said it to the other tenants. Also, he was an idiot when it came to computers and passwords. He had the same password for everything. This grants everyone with one password full access to everything. I'm actually kind of amazed that the landlord cutting off the heat in the middle of the winter didn't lead to immediate consequences for that landlord. Where I live, you legally can't cut off that kind of service in the winter. It's Canada. People will freeze to death. This story comes to us from Chilater. Landlord put me through 3 years of hell. My landlord was a terrible human being. Honestly, calling him a human is even pushing it. Just a few things he has done to me over the past 3 years. Stole my dryer and other household products that are in a common area. Made me pay for a plumbing repair which was deemed normal wear and tear. Tried breaking into my house. Retaliated against me because I went to my lawyer after he sent me a letter about a parking spot. He tried to charge me an extra $150 a month. Mind you, I was never late for rent in 3 years, except for when he made me pay for the plumbing repair. So the next month, I was a couple days late. The list goes on. Now, this apartment was nowhere near nice. I found out the plumbing was illegal. He left me with a porch for years that has safety issues. The ceiling paint was always falling down. Gas heater was not up to code, and so on. I finally got my chance to leave after he wanted to raise my rent $500 a month. He will do anything and everything to get more money out of his tenants. So I called the building inspector 4 days before I left. I told him everything. The porch, when he finally replaced it, didn't have a permit and was definitely not up to code. I told him about the plumbing and the heater. I went on and on. The inspector came over the very next day. I saw him taking measurements. Each violation is a $500 a day fine until fixed. I honestly don't know what happened, but my God, did it feel good to finally get him back. He's at the very least on the town's radar. A week before I moved out, he tried telling me I needed to be out at a specific time. I never responded, and where I lived, that's not how it works. He tried to threaten me with the police if I wasn't gone. Well, I went to the police myself that morning to warn them. The landlord did come by, threaten me, and harass me. I called the police. They informed him I was in the right. Long story short, he had broken into my apartment. I had left to go to storage while I was gone. He nailed my door shut. I told the police to get the supervisor because I was being harassed by this guy. Go figure, he left before the supervisor could get there. I'm positive he knew he'd be arrested on site. Got the police report. They're charging him with a felony for breaking and entering. Fines plus a charge? Don't be a jerk to good people. Jumping down to the comment section on this one, there's one from a user called WhatItDoes9. It says, as a landlord myself, hearing such nasty stories really ticks me off. I've had tenants live in my homes for over a decade. I leave them alone and I let them live their life. It's so simple, but people can't seem to grasp it. Hopefully you don't have to go through such nonsense ever again. OP responded to this one and said, you're a good egg. Thank you for that. If your landlord was saying that they wanted to raise your rent by over $500 a month, you need to talk to your landlord-tenant board depending on where you are. I'm in Ontario, Canada, and if you've lived in a place, the maximum that they can raise your rent by each year is around 2.5%. If they want to go any higher than that, they have to have special permission from the landlord-tenant board. Some landlords get away with so much stuff just because the tenants aren't educated on what their actual rights are. This story comes to us from Reddit Saved My Again. My landlord got not exactly what he deserved, but it sure was a rough ride for him. I had a landlord who was pretty absent. I lived in this building, a high-rise like 20 stories, for 10 plus years. He, despite living next door to me, was absent and cold personally, but cool enough. Rent was good. Our agreement was never bother him about anything unless it's an absolute emergency. Shower head wonky? Go buy a new one. Fridge breaks? Get it fixed. Or dude, just buy a new one. Take it out of what you pay in rent. Lost the receipt? I don't care. I know more or less what a fridge costs. Just take it out of rent. Finally, his wife decides she wants more rent, wants to rent the place out as an office, not legal, and wants us out ASAP. I agree to move out a month early and get a month's rent back plus deposit. Complete 180 on their part. The place is ruined. Can't give you crap until you fix all this stuff. Two main things. My cats did scratch up the leather legs at the dining table, and the pull-up bar made 2 dents in the door frame of the kitchen, which was quite nice hardwood. They come to me with this list of tons of stuff like, oh, you hang a photo frame here, this tile is slightly chipped. This is the busiest work time of year for me, but I'm trying to be cooperative. Sure, I got the table legs re-leathered, spackled the photo frame wall hole, can't do anything about the door frame, take it out of the deposit. Patch the tile, like dozens of little everyday wear and tear things, like you want me to change the window screens? These are all new screens and in nicer shape than when I moved in. But I did them all. I trusted the guy, gotta get my money. At the end, he should have been giving me £2,500, he gave me 5. I still need to use the money to fix all that stuff. If you can't accept the 5, I can't give you anything at all. I was super pissed off, but I took the 5. Now, people in the building are gossipy. I don't participate, but I did tell this one older lady about my frustration. She told everyone. The wife went from being the star of the mommies group of the building to nobody wanting to talk to her. People shunned the guy too. I originally told them I was planning on moving to another city, but an opportunity came up and I ended up renting a similar unit in the same building. So they thought they could just screw me over and not have to see me, but now they still did, often. A year later, the office calls me with some question about how to do something with the floor heating. I go. Door frame is not fixed, still has dents. I call the guy like, what the hell, man? And he tells me to mind my own business. 5 years later, I see the light at my old place is still on at 3 a.m. Huh, that's odd. I go to check, the door is open, and the place is just trashed, ruined. Cabinets broken, stuff on the walls, lazy landlord, and the dents on the kitchen door frame are still there. So the guy never fixed anything, just kept my money. By this time, smartphones were popular, and we had a group chat for the whole building, so about 500 people. I took pictures and posted everything. Apparently, he had also nicked these people's deposit, and there was a huge ruckus when they trashed the place. Cops called, all these people chime in with complaints and pictures, people smoking in the hallways, leaving leaky rubbish outside the front door, videos of people using foul language in front of children, dirty footprints. He got fined a lot for 1. Creating a public disturbance, 2. Degrading the quality of the living space, 3. Illegally renting a residence as an office, and to top it off, the building management wouldn't grant him permission to have workers in to fix the place, so it sat there empty for like 6 months. The fines were big too. Take 1.5 months rent from me, lose a year's rent. Suck it, bro. This landlord basically just wanted you to do all the renovations for them so they could rent it out to somebody else at a higher price. I mean, come on, you lived there for 10 years. Do a deep clean, sweep, vacuum, and that's about it. Then you're off the hook. It makes me wonder sometimes when we hear these stories about landlords not giving back the deposits, if they just don't have the money to give it back. Like, what are the chances that money that's supposed to be sitting in a separate account accruing interest just went to the casino down the street? If you enjoy daily Reddit stories, I encourage you to follow and add us to your favorites on whatever podcasting platform you enjoy the most. Also, if you're on YouTube, make sure to hit that subscribe button. It really helps us out. I thank you for watching and listening. I hope you have a wonderful day, and we'll see you tomorrow.